Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. It's a beautiful day in coastal North Carolina, and I hope you're having an amazing day. Today, I think it's going to be a high of like 82. We have a northeast wind, so we're getting a cool breeze, and it feels really, really good. And just as I told you, this isn't what the video is about, but just to give you a quick update, the greenhouse is now cleared out, so we're going to do some repairs on it and then get it ready. But it's not time for that yet. And what it's time for is today's video. And I've gotten a question before. I posted a garden plan that I had done, and somebody said, why are you planting so much of insert whatever vegetable? And that's a very good question. And the answer is pretty simple, because I want to eat it. But that's not really the answer to this video. It's how do we manage that, right? If we have a whole bed and we want a monocrop, how do we manage growing, 60 rutabagas in this bed, or trying to get 50, 60 pounds of sweet potatoes? On the subject of sweet potatoes, yeah, my squash plant has decided to go absolutely crazy. And we are going to have to harvest our sweet potatoes next video. So you will see that, but the squash plant's going crazy. So we're gonna have to cut it back and do all that, and it sucks too, because I see, let me get in here without getting ate by a snake. I see a female flower that just was pollinated by one of my honeybees. So I don't know, I'd hate to cut it back, but I'm gonna have to. So we're gonna be doing that. The beautiful thing about gardening is there's so much you can do. There's just, you can make your garden. That's why I often say on this channel, like, it's your space. I don't care what you do, because I just enjoy the fact that you get to make your own decisions and grow the amounts that you want. But what I feel like is the good conversation is, let's say you really, really, really like lettuce, right? And the reason why I'm gonna just kind of stick with lettuce for a second is because it's easy to grow. Everybody eats salad, not everybody, but a lot of people eat salads. And it's something that we can enjoy and move, but it's how do you grow enough to go through a whole season and not feel like you're getting inundated with it? So here goes the situation. So here are all our seedlings that are like day 2 of hardening off. So they look a little rough, it's windy, but you see what we've got going on here. We've got, I think this is 25 lettuce plants here. And then we've got another row, 2 rows of pak choi. And then we've got some rutabagas and stuff like that. Now, I've already sowed rutabagas in my garden, and so now I have more going. And that we're gonna do a lot of lettuce, because this is not all we're gonna grow. We're gonna do a lot. We're gonna do a lot. And the trick is, you gotta learn how to manage everything, right? That's the part of this that's hard. It's not like we're running farms here. It's not like we're just like, oh, well, we're gonna plant 800 lettuce plants and then we're going to harvest them all and they're going to be gone. That's not really the case, because we're consuming them. So we've got to learn how, and this is where this really opens the door to like preservation, timing. This is really like all of our skills added into one place, right? All of our skills are added into one place that we build over time in the garden. Starting seeds inside, okay? So the first way I manage it is I start my seeds inside, but I'm not starting all of them. So some of these I start inside, or some of these are all the seeds, and some of these you have to start inside. So what we see here is we've got our Brussels sprouts. Now, you see my honeybee. They like to get into the wet soil and suck the water out. Super weird, whatever. So these are the Brussels sprouts we started outside, and they did not do well. We started them outside, the shade house failed, we moved them inside, and now we're getting them going. And you can see we've got a couple that look good, but for the most part, it's not looking pretty. But we're not gonna direct sow these because they're really long crops. You're talking 100+ days, especially with the sun as low as it is. It's gonna be 120, 30 days for these more than likely. But then you come into something like this broccoli and cabbage. Like, this is a broccoli and cabbage tray. Now, we sowed both of these in the garden already. This has got, we already went over that. It's got all that in there. I'm getting my steps in today for this video, and I apologize for the wind noise. It's brutal today. So we got all of these seeds going. and we started some cabbage and broccoli out in the garden, and that was two things. We wanted to see how it worked, because ultimately I would love for that to be my future in the garden, as being like, okay, I'm gonna go direct sow this, that, and the other. But when we start our seeds inside, it's doing a couple things. One, it's giving us a fail-safe, and two, it's giving us a second round. Let's look at this broccoli. I took my shade cloth down and it's doing whatever it wants to do. So we've got our broccoli going. The plan for this is to really get, we've got a couple, we got one, skipped 1, 2, 3, raccoon dug up that one. There may be one actually germinating over there. Skipped 1, 2. So we've got some spots that we need to fill in, and that's exactly what these seedlings that we grew are for. Not also for that, they're for a staggered harvest, okay? So in the spring, we did something and we were able, very successfully, we had 100% harvest on our broccoli. We harvested 28 heads of broccoli. The problem is we harvested 28 heads of broccoli within the span of a week or two. So that's a lot of broccoli. And we ate all of it, we didn't waste it, but I will tell you that I got really tired of eating broccoli. And we don't want that to happen, especially as we come into the next season, and then knowing that winter is really a down season where we're not really growing a lot. I want to get these plants so that they grow, but not only do they grow, we have a staggered harvest. So what does that look like? Truth be told, that looks like once we get our seedlings in the ground, and you just saw the seedlings. I know we didn't do like a close-up or anything, dramatic like that, but this seedling right here, they're clearly bigger, clearly, right? So if we factor in the time that we put the seedling in the ground, and then it has to overcome its shock, so you give it a couple days that it won't grow. Meanwhile, these are growing the whole time, right? So we need to thin these. And actually what I may do instead of thinning them is I may just separate them and move them into the gaps and see how that works while the other ones are hardening off. But we'll get those in the ground, and they're still gonna outgrow these, more than likely. I mean, this is all a test. I've never direct sowed any of these what I call long season crops out in the ground. But for the most part, I'm imagining that they're going to outgrow these just because these are much, I mean, we're just now getting our first true leaf on there, where the other ones have 1 to 2 sets on them. So we know just by that they are ahead of these. That means we get a varied harvest. That means whatever we put in the ground now, within a period of time, and they don't all go at the same time. And the thought process is too, as we get into the cooler season, so in coastal North Carolina in the spring, you basically have to harvest broccoli like when you think it's done, you better harvest it or else it's gonna bolt. It doesn't really work that way in the fall here. It's a much more gentle season for the most part, other than the wild temperature swings, which we talked about in a previous video. I'll link to that at the end because it's really important. But still, we can see a head of broccoli form, and they don't really want to bolt as easily here in the fall. So even though we're gonna put in probably 7 or 8 more broccolis in this bed alone, they won't all be ready within the same week or two. They may be over a 2 to 3 week period. And that's a big deal. Same with these. These that we have already in the ground may be over a 2 to 3 week period, maybe even more, and where they're ready to go. So we can kind of space it out. We don't have to gorge on broccoli. I like my vitamins, but I don't need that many vitamins. So let's come over here to the rutabaga bed now and just give a little chat about that, because this is a totally different scenario. We've got our rutabagas going. You can see them growing. They are just starting to get their first leaves as well. They're true leaves, so that's good. But the same thing applies. Now the difference here, there's a really big difference here, is you can put your rutabaga in the ground, but this is a storage crop. Don't you love how this is just waving in my face constantly? I'm gonna have to fix that soon. It'll hold. You can put a rutabaga in the refrigerator, and then you can space it out. You can have it in there for a month. We've had them in there for like 6 weeks before, and they've done pretty good. They get a little bit questionable, but anything in this bed So you can see we've got them going down. I do need to do some weeds, some that popped up, so that we can really get a good look at them. And now that the shade cloth is off, and it should be off for the next week, they'll get much stronger because they'll be getting more sunlight. But you start to see how this is going to shape out. We can fill gaps, and we still have another half of the bed at minimum to plant. What does that mean? Well, that's pretty simple. We harvest them. Let's just say that half the bed that was direct seeded comes to fruition or ripens. I don't really like to say ripen because it's not a fruit. It's ready to harvest. Let's say 2 to 3, let's go with the same time frame. And I'm thinking it may even be 3 to 4 weeks after the ones that we put in the ground. But then you can hold them in the fridge for 6 weeks. So you've got a long-term situation going here, you know, and that's why we plant a whole bed of this and more if we want, because of that, because there's so many different ways, and the fact that we can store it and go longer. Same goes with cabbage. Cabbage is another really, really good one because the cabbage grows, but it'll hold in the fridge for, I would say, roughly about a month. You can keep it in the refrigerator. Not to mention, please don't forget this, not to mention, you can leave it in the garden and keep it fresh on the plant until you want it, until, you know, something crazy, like it gets cold and it's going to get burnt or anything like that. But we can use this as a storage facility for our produce. And so you're taking that, and you say, let's say cabbage is done today. Let's just say today, and it's, I don't know, it's not September 1st, but let's just be easy. It's September 1st. We leave it out here for 2 weeks. We come and get it. We could have eaten it any time within that 2 weeks. Then we come and get it, and we can eat it then, or we can store it for about a month later. So now you're talking about 6 weeks, you've got this cabbage going, and it's very common for that this time of year. So when you look at what we're planting and how we're planting it, you'll see a lot of people planting lots and lots of these things. It's the same thing. And the lettuce, which is a difficult one because it doesn't stay good for so long, you know, you can't just harvest it and let it sit. You got to harvest it and eat it, you know, within 4, 5, 6 days. So that's part of it too, because what we'll do, we'll come out here and we'll sow a bed. Probably, I'm adjusting my plan now, probably this bed. We'll sow this bed, and then we'll come back and we'll seed it. So we'll direct sow it in the front, we'll put the plants in the back, and then you can see the rotation now. Now, there's a whole different avenue to this, because not only are we going to put those in here, but we're probably going to put our kale and collards in here, and we're only going to put probably 3 of each kale and collards in the ground. The whole new thing that we're going to throw a total wrench in to make this last even longer. So this is where you may or may not need to plant as much, but we're going to put our lettuce in, but we're not going to take the whole head. We're just going to do our cut and come again method, because they will continue to grow throughout the fall into the winter. We can cover them, get them to last longer, and then that'll really help them to grow. So we don't have to harvest the whole head. So when we look at it, it's not just like cut it and it's done. We can enjoy it, do a cut coming in from a couple plants. I typically like to skip every other plant and trim, you know, for a certain period until I get what I want. But then you can make it last even longer, which can help reduce the amount that you need to grow, versus in the spring for lettuce, we need to grow as much as we can because we're going to harvest the whole head, because it's going to end up bolting. And that's not what we want. We don't want that to happen. You know what I mean? So what we'll end up doing is we'll do that. Now, kale and collards are different because they grow here no problem throughout the whole winter. So we can have 3 plants, cut and come again all the way around it. We vary our diets. So we kind of use kale and collards interchangeably for mixed greens in our beds. So we'll do that as well. And it makes a huge, huge difference. So you can see that yes, we plant a lot, but we've planned out the way that we harvest it, we use it, we store it, we preserve it, which I'm not really doing a lot of preserving for winter. It's mostly curing and just like refrigerating, which works really, really well. And truth be told, let's say I ran out of space in my refrigerator, I could use that if I wanted to. You know what I mean? It gets cold in there, it's not heated, doesn't really get warm. It's a great use for it. As a terrible YouTuber, I have no idea what the title of this video is going to be at this time, but my question to you is, are you really planting enough? Do the numbers scare you of what you want to put in your garden, or you feel like you need to but you don't? Because that's what happened to me for a long time. The numbers kind of freaked me out, and then I got around to it and I started doing it, and it actually worked out better. Yeah, we may have a little bit of waste, but it works out in the long run, and we have enough. And I think that's the important part when we go through all of this work. And you know, my goal in homesteading, as this goes, as far as the garden goes, is to produce enough for us. So I'm not going to produce enough if I skimp. And that's really why I moved to monocropping my beds, because I had plenty of space for them. And you'll see some adjustments in the next season, stuff like that, next growing season. But for right now, I'm really happy with it, and it's been working out really well. So if you have kind of had any issues or thoughts about this, or wondering like how much to plant, let us know in the comments, and especially what crop you struggle with in order to figure out the numbers to plant. Because I can tell you this, when I planted 32 broccolis in one bed and they all grew, the only thing I wish I'd done different is spaced them out differently and started them at different dates. Other than that, I was extremely happy with that, and I felt like that was enough to kind of move us. It was just producing that food at a more constant level instead of a feast or famine.